Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of The Roundabout Way of Fate. This will be part 2, the second half to chapter 1. Dr. Tsubasa looks stunned when Inko tells him about Izuku's strange new quirk, but he doesn't look disbelieving. Instead, he calmly retrieves a scalpel and scrapes off a small amount of skin on his wrist before asking Izuku to demonstrate his ability. The boy happily obliges, and the doctor watches with fascination as his own skin heals right before his eyes. "Well," he huffs good-naturedly, "that's a healing quirk, all right." Inko's eyes widen as Izuku squeals in excitement. "Really?" he asks, eyes sparkling. "Yes, and a pretty powerful one if I'm not mistaken," Dr. Tsubasa replies, much to the delight of the young boy. "A healing quirk. He really has a healing quirk, and a powerful one." "But, Tsubasa-san," Inko says, smiling hesitantly at her son's happiness, "I don't understand. No one in my family or my husband's family has a healing quirk, at least none that we knew of." "And I wouldn't expect them to," Dr. Tsubasa explains, notably looking at both Inko and Izuku as he does so, as opposed to only the former, like he did during their earlier visit. "You see, healing quirks are exceptionally rare, and one of the reasons for that is because they're not hereditary, meaning that they aren't passed down through genetics. Only a small amount of quirks spontaneously manifest in people without a prior genetic inclination for that quirk, and an even smaller amount of that small amount are healing quirks." He smiles at Inko. "Your son has something truly special here, Midoriya-san." Inko inhales sharply and smiles again, this time more warmly. "Oh," she breathes, tucking her son closer to her side. "That's good, then." "Very good," the doctor says. "In all my years as a medical professional, I've never seen a quirk like his before. Healing quirks usually work by manipulating some aspect of the patient's body to help them heal faster. I'm sure you've heard of the youthful heroine recovery girl." Both Inko and Izuku nod, the latter more vigorously. "Well, her quirk speeds up a person's natural healing abilities by drawing from their stamina. An old colleague of mine could manipulate blood, which was helpful in stopping bleeding. I've also heard of a handful of other people with pain-stopping quirks, but this energy transfer that your son has described, well, I've never seen anything like it. And the speed that his quirk healed at—" He laughs incredulously and shakes his head. "It's truly amazing. I'm envious even. Most doctors and nurses either have diagnosis-like quirks or more minor healing quirks. People with stronger healing quirks are so rare they're usually snatched up by hero agencies as soon as possible." Izuku gasps at the words hero agencies and clutches his mother's arm excitedly. Inko brushes her hand through his hair, but her smile wavers slightly. "So, Izuku's quirk," she starts. "Everything's all right, then. It's so unfamiliar and rare that I can't help but worry." "Oh yes, of course," Dr. Tsubasa says. "All quirks have drawbacks, as I'm sure you know. From what Izuku has told me and from what I've seen, it seems like his quirk relies on him passing his own energy to someone else. He mentioned being tired after using it a lot, so I assume that there's a limited amount of energy to give, and if he overuses his quirk, he'll exhaust himself, so—" He turns to fix Izuku with a kind but firm look. "Let's not use your quirk to heal every single scrape and bruise your friends might get, okay?" Izuku smiles and nods. "Okay." "Good." Dr. Tsubasa nods and pats his head. "Well, aside from that, you should have no worries." He smiles when he says that, but for some reason his smile seems to falter after a moment. Izuku doesn't notice, already getting up as the doctor's tone of voice suggests the appointment is about to finish, but Inko notices it immediately. She stands up when the doctor does and begins walking with her son to the door. Before she leaves, however, Dr. Tsubasa stops her with his arm. He hesitates, then smiles down at Izuku. "Hey, Midoriya-kun, why don't you play with the toys in the waiting room for a little bit?" he suggests, voice light. "I just need to talk to your mother about some paperwork for a few minutes." Izuku simply shrugs. "Okay." They wait for him to leave, then shut the door behind him. He skips down the hall into the waiting room, humming in contemplation. Dr. Tsubasa said a lot of things with a lot of big words, but Izuku thinks he understood most of it. Excitement bubbles in his chest. His quirk is super rare, and he can help people with it. Can this day get any better? When he re-enters the waiting room, he spies a basket of toys in the far corner. There are already a couple of kids playing, but he figures he can join them. Before, he might have hesitated, but he is a quirk now. Why should he? The two kids smile at him and let him join their game, and when the topic of quirks inevitably comes up, cheerfully he proclaims that he has a healing quirk. Their eyes widen, and they ooh and ah, causing pride to fill his chest. Having a quirk to be proud of is something new and amazing for him. God, he's so happy his quirk manifested. They play for a few minutes while talking about their powers. Oki-kun can make plants grow when she spits on dirt, and Yamabe-kun can turn hard objects soft. They both get called in for their appointments, and Izuku's only alone for a minute before his mother returns. He beams at her, but for some reason she looks troubled. "Mama?" he questions, but she merely plasters on a fake smile and tells him that it's time to go. The anxious look on her face doesn't disappear on the drive home, and when he tries to distract her with conversation, her replies are short and tense. Izuku doesn't understand. The doctor just told them great news, and his quirk is even better than he expected. Why isn't she happy? She also takes them straight to Kachan's house instead of their own home. Uncle Masaru is surprised when he answers the door, but welcomes them in anyways. "Zuku!" Kachan shouts as a greeting. He stomps over and demands, "What did the doctor say?" Auntie Mitsuki ruffles her son's hair and ignores his indignant squawking. "The little brat told us what happened today." She props her hand on her hip. "So is it true? Does Izuku have a healing quirk?" Yeah, apparently," Inko replies, rubbing the back of her neck. "It's super rare, but healing quirks just manifest spontaneously, so they're not passed down from the parents. Izuku can kind of pass his energy on to other people, and I guess that heals them." "Wow," Auntie Mitsuki says, flashing a grin at Izuku. "Nice one, kiddo." "Yeah," Uncle Masaru agrees, but then trails off when he looks at Inko. He must see something in her expression because he turns to the two young boys and says, "Hey, how about you guys go play in Katsuki's room?" Izuku looks up. "Oh, okay." Kachan scoffs and starts pulling him towards his room, but instead of going inside, he stops at the end of the hallway. Turning to Izuku, he presses a finger to his lips and crouches down. "Kachan?" Izuku whispers. "What are we doing?" "Shh!" Kachan hisses back. "Idiot! They sent us away because they want to talk about stuff behind our backs." Izuku blinks and then tilts his head in confusion. "Then, shouldn't we leave?" Kachan scowls and covers the other boy's mouth with his hand, leaning closer to the entrance of the hallway so he can hear better. "Inko-san," Uncle Masaru asks quietly, "is everything okay?" There's a few moments of silence, then a soft sniffle. "Inko-san!" Auntie Mitsuki cries out a little too loudly, causing her husband to shush her. "What's wrong?" Nothing. Inko replies hastily, but her voice breaks. "I mean, nothing's wrong with Izuku. I'm happy for him, really. It's just..." Her voice trails off and she sniffles a couple more times, trying not to hiccup. Hearing his mother struggle not to cry makes Izuku want to go out and comfort her, but Kachan holds him still. Uncle Masaru's voice speaks up. "Why don't we sit down and you can tell us what happened?" Inko must nod because there's the sound of footsteps and then chairs scraping against the floor. Izuku hears his mother inhale shakily before beginning to speak. "It's just something the doctor wanted to warn me about before we left." "I don't mean to scare you with what I'm about to tell you, Midoriya-san," Dr. Tsubasa says as he closes the door behind him. "But considering the situation, I just feel I have to give you a heads up. Please, take a seat." Inko does, and the doctor sits on a stool across from her. Clasping his hands in front of him, he says, "I just need to emphasize how rare your son's quirk is, and how powerful it could potentially become. He's only 5 years old, and yet he was able to completely heal a dislocated bird's wing. I have no doubt that his quirk will only strengthen with age, but he trails off for a moment, then asks, "How much do you know about Recovery Girl?" Inko blinks in surprise, then admits, "Not much, really. I just know she works at UA." Dr. Tsubasa nods. She is also considered to have one of the most powerful healing quirks in Japan, if not the most powerful. She doesn't do this as often anymore, but she used to travel all across Japan and sometimes the world to heal people with her quirk. She's also the only reason UA can train their students the way they do. Without her, I'm sure the school would have to face numerous lawsuits from parents whose children come home from school injured every day. And since healing quirks are so rare, hero agencies never seem to have enough healers, and they often travel between agencies to help out where they're needed. He pauses, opens his mouth, then closes it. Finally, he settles on. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, Izuku will be highly sought after once people become more aware of his quirk. "Oh," Inko says. That's wonderful. Izuku has always loved heroes. He wants to be one too, although I suppose with his new quirk things might happen a bit differently. But I'm sure he'd be thrilled to work with them." She smiles, but it fades away quickly, at the look on the doctor's face. "What is it?" "It's just—" He sighs, then meets her gaze head-on and says, "Healers are not only sought after by heroes. It's not unheard of for villains to seek out healers and try to kidnap them, especially organized crime groups. See, they can't go to the hospital if they get hurt in a fight, so healers are valuable to them too. Hero agencies usually keep their healers close and protected at all costs, especially in the most recent decade, but... Well, I'm sure you heard of the incident with the healer at Endeavor's agency, yes?" "Huh? No, I haven't," Inko replies, clutching her purse anxiously. "Oh, well, I suppose it's been a while. Probably only a couple of years before Izuku was born, actually. Well, there was a bit of drama going on with Endeavor's hero agency because his healer was stolen by villains. Endeavor managed to rescue him a couple of days later, of course, but it was quite the scandal. People criticized Endeavor rather harshly, but it ended with hero agencies significantly increasing the protection around their healers, so overall, there was a good outcome." Inko looks down at her shoes, biting her lip as her anxiety rises. Dr. Tsubasa notices and places his hand over hers. "I'm sorry. I really don't mean to scare you with this. I just need you to be aware," he says soothingly. "Izuku's quirk is wonderful, but you just need to keep a close eye on him. Right now, he's at his most vulnerable because he's young and cannot defend himself. Maybe just make sure he always has a friend with him when he walks home from school." At this point, Inko is fighting off tears. "Oh, God," she hiccups. I don't know. I never thought about this. I never even considered." She sniffles and lets out a wavering sigh. "Izuku loves heroes, and I'm sure he'll want to use his quirk to help them, but should I not let him? Should I just—" No, actually," Dr. Tsubasa interrupts. "His love for heroes is a good thing. If he wants to become a hero healer, then he absolutely should." "But you just said—" "His quirk will get attention no matter where he goes," he says. "But if he ends up working with heroes, then he'll have their protection. That's why I said most doctors and nurses have minor healing quirks, because people with powerful ones often catch the attention of heroes, who will in turn protect them from any villains who also have their eye on them." "Oh, okay," Inko says, nodding rapidly. She takes a deep breath and nods once more, her mind racing. "Okay, this is a lot, but—" She exhales sharply and laughs shakily. "And I was worried he'd breathe fire." The doctor chuckles sympathetically, before sobering up. He pats her hand and smiles at her reassuringly. "Don't ever forget, Izuku's quirk is a good thing. He just needs to be a bit more careful than most children." Inko sniffles and wipes her watery eyes. Uncle Masaru hands her a tissue that she gratefully accepts and dries off her tears. "Wow," Auntie Mitsuki says, her voice unusually soft. "Long day, huh?" Inko lets out a wet laugh. I'm sorry. I probably look like such a mess." She apologizes profusely. "It's just the thought of some villain snatching up my poor baby." Hey, that's not gonna happen, Auntie Mitsuki reassures. We're not gonna let that happen. I'll make sure our little brat stays by his side at all times. Huh? Inko says. Oh no, I don't want to impose. Nonsense, Auntie Mitsuki insists. They're already best friends. It wouldn't be any trouble. And perhaps, Uncle Masaru suggests, when Izuku's a bit older, he could take some self-defense classes. Oh, Inko perks up a bit. That's a good idea. Maybe he... As the parents continue to discuss things quietly, Izuku and Kachan listen from the hallway. Izuku is struggling to understand what's going on. His mother sounded so sad that he kept wanting to run to her side and comfort her, but Kachan kept grabbing him and holding him back. They tried to keep their tussling as quiet as possible, but Izuku still missed some of what was said. He kept hearing the words healer, Izuku's quirk, danger, and heroes, and combining that with what little else he heard, his mind comes to the realization that he's been wondering about ever since his quirk manifested. I can become a hero, he says to Kachan excitedly. Unfortunately, he also said it a bit too loudly, and conversation in the other room stops. Shh, Kachan hisses, but it's too late. Boys, Auntie Mitsuki barks. Come out here. Glaring at Izuku, Kachan huffs and begrudgingly walks out of the hallway, the smaller boy on his heels. Auntie Mitsuki frowns at them as they approach the table where the adults are sitting. You shouldn't eavesdrop, she scolds. Sorry, ma'am, Izuku begins to say, only to be interrupted by Kachan. What's going on here? He snaps. Why would someone want to take Zuku? His quirk isn't that cool. What? Yeah, it is, Izuku protests, but shrinks away when his friend glares at him. I can be a hero with it. Kachan snorts. What? No way. You're just gonna become a doctor or some shit. Oi, don't say shit like that, brat, Auntie Mitsuki snaps, but her son merely rolls his eyes. Dismayed, Izuku glances from Kachan to the adults and cries. But I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be a hero. And you can be a hero, Inko says, causing Izuku to beam. Well, sort of. I was just talking about it with Dr. Tsubasa-san. You can be a hero healer. The children share the same confused expression and both tilt their heads nearly simultaneously. A what? Huh? A hero healer, Uncle Masaru explains. All hero agencies have them. They're people with really good healing quirks that heal heroes when they get hurt while fighting villains. Oh, Izuku blinks thoughtfully. He'd never really thought about something like that before. Of course, heroes need healers. It makes sense that they would. They just don't magically get better after all. But him? A healer? He isn't sure. Kachan sniffs and tosses his head. Well, when I'm a hero, I won't need one, he says braggingly. I'll be so strong I'll never get hurt. He flashes his quirk to prove his point, but shrieks furiously when Auntie Mitsuki gives him a little slap on the back of his head. Of course you're gonna get hurt, you little shit, she snaps. All heroes get hurt one way or another. Didn't you just say Izuku healed you when you overused your quirk? Kachan grumbles angrily and looks like he wants to argue back, but Uncle Masaru eases the tension by saying, Even All Might's agency has healers. Kachan and Izuku perk up at this, so the man smiles and adds, Every hero needs a healer, and according to Dr. Tsubasa-san, they're apparently in high demand. Yeah, so you better keep little Izuku close or another hero will snatch him up, Auntie Mitsuki teases. Kachan's eyes widen and dart from his mother to his friend before they narrow. What the hell? No way, he growls. If you're going to be anyone's healer, you're going to be mine. He grabs onto Izuku's arm, and the smaller boy giggles. Everyone has been looking at him with bright and hopeful eyes ever since he manifested his quirk just a few hours ago. Tsubasa and Inaba were actually pretty nice to him. Usually they either ignored him or tease him, as they follow Kachan around. And Dr. Tsubasa, he seemed really impressed with his quirk. And Auntie Mitsuki, Uncle Masaru, and Inko are all really enthusiastic about the whole healer thing. But I won't really be a hero, will I? He asks, his voice downtrodden. The adults turn to him in surprise. I thought maybe if I got Mama or Papa's quirk, I could, but... He looks down at his hands. He can still remember the feeling of his energy being passed to the bird's wing. He clenches them. Looking up at his mother, he struggles to keep the tears out of his eyes as he says, I can't beat up villains with a quirk like this. I can't protect people, so how could I really be a hero? Kacchan is gazing at him with an odd expression, like he can't quite decide how he feels about the situation. Izuku sniffles and rubs his nose with the back of his hand as Auntie Mitsuki kneels down in front of him. Hey, healers are important too, you know, she says, knocking his forehead lightly with her knuckle. Don't dismiss yourself so easily. Yeah, it's a bit of a change of plans for you, but that doesn't mean you can't still be a hero. Hell, you're literally going to be the hero of heroes. So chin up, kiddo. Izuku blinks at her with wide eyes. The hero of heroes. That does sound kind of cool. And, Inko says, joining Auntie Mitsuki, you won't be giving your poor mother anxiety about you putting yourself in danger every day. Auntie Mitsuki barks out a laugh, and Uncle Masaru smiles. Then why'd you sound so upset? Kacchan asks, bringing attention back to him. We heard Auntie crying. The three adults share glances between them, obviously silently communicating. It clearly frustrates Kacchan, but soon his father sighs softly and explains. We're just worried about people taking advantage of Izuku, he says. Do you know what that means? Izuku frowns. I heard Auntie say that bad people want to take Zuku, Kacchan declares. Auntie Mitsuki huffs, grumbling something about eavesdropping under her breath. Uncle Masaru puts a hand on her shoulder, but the next moment she straightens up and fixes Kacchan with a hard look. Well, you won't let that happen now, will you? She snaps. Kacchan scowls. Huh? If some fucker comes along and decides to snatch Izuku because he wants to force him to use his quirk, what are you gonna do? Auntie Mitsuki asks. Uncle Masaru tries to warn her not to be so blatant about it, so as not to scare the kids, but her fiery question gets the reaction she wanted. I'll beat him up, of course, Kacchan jumps up, flaring his quirk. I'll beat up any fucker who tries to take him. That's right, Auntie Mitsuki nods approvingly, then roughly ruffles her son's hair. Kacchan grumpily shoves her hand away and scoffs. Psh, that's what you were so worried about. His gaze lands on Inko, who's looking at him with watery eyes and a smile, and he blushes. He glances away with a huff and grabs onto Izuku's arm again. Yeah, I'll keep him safe, he grunts, feigning nonchalance. The adults seem pleased, but Izuku tilts his head in thought. I would have healed them if they asked, he says innocently. Inko shakes her head and takes his hands into hers. No, baby, I'm sorry, but you can't just use your quirk on anyone who asks you to, especially not strangers. There are some bad people out there that might want to take you so they can use your quirk. Izuku doesn't look like he quite understands. But wouldn't they not take him if he just heals them? But Kacchan scowls and bares his teeth. His grip on Izuku's arm tightens. I won't let that happen. Good, Auntie Mitsuki gives a single, satisfied nod. Thank you, Katsuki-kun, Inko says much more gently. She smiles at him and lightly scratches his hair, but he doesn't push her hand away. Instead, he merely blushes and averts his gaze, pulling Izuku back towards his room. Come on, Zuku, let's go play video games or something, he grumbles. You're staying for dinner, right? Inko startles, suddenly noticing how late it is, and jumps to her feet. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stay so long. I don't mean to impose. Auntie Mitsuki laughs and wraps an arm around her shoulders. Oh, shut up. You know you're always welcome. Oh, well, at least let me help with dinner. Nope, you're going to sit down and drink a big glass of wine and get this tension out of your shoulders. As Inko continues to babble, Uncle Masaru follows the two women into the kitchen, shaking his head with a soft smile on his face. Kacchan rolls his eyes and pushes Izuku into his room. Ugh, grown-ups. Katsuki isn't really sure how to feel about all this. Izuku's new quirk is weird. It's weird it manifested so late. It's weird that it's so different from his parents' quirks, and it's weird that it's a healing quirk of all things. Katsuki doesn't like surprises, and he most certainly did not appreciate this one either. He thought Zuko would get one of his parents' quirks like everyone else. He thought he'd manifest his mother's weak-ass telekinetic quirk or maybe his father's fire-breathing quirk. Something weak compared to his explosion quirk. But something that could at least provide some entertainment for them. Playing with a healing quirk might be a little bit hard, though, and it doesn't seem like it'd be very fun anyway. The grown-ups are being so weird about Zuko's quirk, too, making it seem like it's so special, and that annoys Katsuki, but it seems to scare Auntie Inko. Even as a 5-year-old, Katsuki could see the genuine fear in her eyes as she told her son why he couldn't use his quirk on strangers. Katsuki likes Auntie Inko. She's pretty and kind, all smooth curves and round softness, so different from his own mother's roughness and hard edges. Her hugs are the only ones Katsuki never pushes away because they feel like being wrapped in a warm blanket fresh from the laundry, and she has doe-like eyes that crinkle when she smiles. Zuko has those eyes too, along with all of his mother's softness. He's timid and gentle and cries easily, and so unlike Katsuki in so many ways, but maybe that's what makes him the best playmate. Not that he would ever admit it. He's always the first to run up to a dog in the street and pet it, and he's always the first to run away from something fun and dangerous instead of towards it. He's small and weak, and so Katsuki supposes, if he thinks about it, that perhaps this new quirk is actually quite fitting for him then. It's not flashy or strong, and neither is he. Honestly, Katsuki can't even imagine someone as meek as Zuko with anything better than some lame healing quirk. Figures he'd need someone as strong as Katsuki to keep him safe. It makes sense. A feeling of importance fills Katsuki's chest, and his gaze roams over Zuko as the smaller boy kneels beside their hero toys scattered on the ground. Even though Zuko's new quirk isn't nearly as cool as his, Katsuki can at least see its usefulness. Overusing his quirk always makes his wrists ache terribly, but Zuko made the pain go away almost as soon as he touched him. And even though he still stands by what he said earlier, he'll be so strong he'll never get hurt. He sure as hell isn't going to let some other hero snatch up Zuko. His mother said that every hero needs a healer, and Katsuki was Zuko's friend first, so Zuko is his healer. He'll beat up anyone, hero or bad guy, that tries to take him for his quirk. "Kachan, are we going to play?" Zuko turns and asks, blinking at him with his large, innocent eyes. Katsuki jerks out of his thoughts. "Of course we are, nerd," he snaps roughly, making Zuko startle. He steps over to him. Maybe this won't be such a bad thing, Zuko's new quirk. Being Zuko's protector. It'll make Auntie Inko happy. He'll get to have Zuko as his healer, and he gets to be the hero in all this. As he plops down next to Zuko, the smaller boy wordlessly hands him the All Might toy with a bright smile. Katsuki feels something in his chest stir, and he takes it. Yeah, he'll protect him all right. All right, listeners, this concludes the second half to Chapter 1. Chapter 2 will be up next. I'm eager to hear what you all thought of the full introduction to this fic. I'm a huge fan of the Healer Izuku fics, and I thought this one's a really good representation of that, so please drop those comments below. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.